Hello everyone, so my 28-inch bar for my G660 finally arrived in the mail today, so I've got that on the saw, and we're going to do some cut testing, comparing the G660 to the G444 in some poplar I have back there, as well as a big hunk of white ash and some big wood. And I thought today we would also talk about my chainsaw lineup and the different sizes of them and why I have each one and what I use them for. So let's start with my smallest one, which is this Ryobi. You've seen this in some other videos. This is a 37cc saw with a 16-inch bar. And I basically just use this one for reaching above my head, cutting limbs above my head. I know you're not supposed to do that too much, but when you do, a small saw is good to have, so you're not lifting a big heavy saw with a big kickback above your head to trim those branches. Also, I find them really good for construction projects where I'm out of the range of an extension cord, like up at the cottage. I do a lot of work with this there, and it's just a nice small saw that's great to use for just for lumber and building projects. So this is that one. The next one is this one, the Champion 40cc. I think this is basically the same size. It might actually be the exact same cylinder as the Ryobi. The Ryobi says it's 37 cc's. This one is a 40 cc supposedly, but they honestly cut about the same. This one was the second saw I ever bought, and I'll talk about this one a little bit later on why I got this one. And then yeah, so it's basically the same purpose. I just have this as well as a Ryobi because this one stopped working on me. I changed the carb on it. I bought a carb from AliExpress, changed the carb, still couldn't get it running very well. So I ended up selling it to a guy who was selling these Ryobis. He bought a skid of these Ryobis off an auction or something. And so I bought this one off him, and I basically traded him for this one. He ended up getting this one running, sort of. So I said I'd buy it back from him. And then when I went to pick it up, it still wasn't running right. He did a bunch of work on the carb, or tuning the carb, and it still wasn't running great. So I bought it back from him for like dirt cheap because it still wasn't running right. And then it turned out he just put the piece that sits between the carburetor and the cylinder intake. That piece was on upside down, so I don't think it was sealing very well. So I flipped that around, and now it runs pretty good. It's still not as great. I don't like it as much as the Ryobi. It always starts a little bit harder. The Ryobi always starts up right away, and I tend to prefer the Ryobi over this one, but I bought this one back from him for dirt cheap, so why not, right? The next saw is actually the first gas saw I ever bought. This is the Supmix 6200. They claim it's a 62cc. There's been some other YouTubers, Chainsaw Canuck, he's actually measured the cylinder on these things. These are a Zenoa clone, apparently. And this saw in particular is actually a 54.5cc, not a 62cc saw. So just keep that in mind if you're going to buy one. I love this saw. It's always started up great. I have two of them. I have one at the cottage and one here at the house. And both of them run really well. This one, for some reason, I think has come with some weak springs in the clutch or something. The chain tends to spin on idle, no matter how much I turn the idle screw down or the low jet down. But other than that, it's been a great saw. One thing I have done is this switch here. I replaced this. This used to be like a toggle switch. And the problem with these saws is when they run, they vibrate. Sometimes the off switch will vibrate and shut down. And then turn the saw off. So I just replaced that switch. I took it out. I filed some of the chassis away to make this square switch fit, and now it just stays on. It's great. It's a really nice upgrade if you're planning on getting this saw and it doesn't vibrate off. And it was like a pack of 10 of these on AliExpress for like, I don't know, $10 or something like that. So super cheap, little bit of filing, put the new switch on. It's great. Size of this saw. What I use this for is actually sometimes a little bit of firewood at the cottage. So at the cottage we have a lot of dead pine, anywhere from 6 inches to slightly bigger. So you don't need a whole lot of saw. So I do a little bit of sawing with this in firewood. However, now that I have my G44, which I'll show you next, I don't actually pick this up very often. I much prefer the G44. It is heavier, but it just cuts so much faster, and the longer bar on it means I don't have to bend over as much. So this is actually probably my least used saw now, but it was my first saw that I ever bought, next to an old electric plug-in I had, which I got rid of that once I went into gas saws. So quick note while I edit this video, there's Molly sitting with me. I realized I didn't talk too much about the other types of sawing I do and why I prefer the G444 over the Supmix now. So yes, I do some firewood of, soft pine at the cottage, up to, well, firewood's usually, the 6 or 8 inch logs that we just cut up, and then anything bigger than that I'll do some milling with, all white pine. But then also down here at my dad's farm, he's got a forest full of ash and a hobby bandsaw mill, like a Woodland Mills. So we do a lot of logging with that, and I find that Supmix is just a little bit too slow when you're cutting a big piece of white ash, as a big piece of hardwood. So that's why I prefer the G444 a lot more. Is it just has the power to cut through that ash a lot faster. Back to the video. So I would say this is a good size saw for somebody who's only going to have one saw, because it's small enough that you can, do trim work with. It's not super heavy, and it has a decent amount of power for what it is. It rips pretty good for being a small saw. So that's that one, and then we get into the Pulse Formas. So this is my G444. So this originally was a 71 cc saw. I absolutely love this saw. It's run great for me. I bought it originally to do some milling of pine and some other stuff at the cottage to make boards. It has spent a fair amount of time in my mill, and then I've cut some big hard maple with it. But then what did happen is the cylinder burned out on me. So actually, I'll show you the cylinder. I'm pretty sure. Let's see if I can find it. It's up here. So here's the piston and cylinder. I'm pretty sure it was a lean seizure. And the fact that I was running in the mill, it took a lot of abuse. Let's see if I can show you this here. So, there it is. So there's the exhaust side of the cylinder. You can see it's pretty scored up. The rings in here are basically fused into the inside, so it lost compression. It wouldn't start on me. So that piston is pretty much toast. So what I did, I just replaced the cylinder and piston. I wanted to put a highway cylinder in it, which is a high quality aftermarket, but I did this back in early December, late November, when the postal strike was on, and the only way I could order a highway cylinder was through post. So I just went on Amazon. The Prime, delivers outside of Canada Post, so I was able to order just a Chinese piston and cylinder for this. Really quickly, came the next day. Super easy to change. It took me, less than an hour to take the old piston off, put the new piston in. And what I actually accidentally ordered a big bore kit for it. So normally this is a 50 millimeter piston, and I ordered the 52 millimeter. So by my calculations, this is now a 76 cc saw instead of a 71. It's hard to tell the difference. I don't know if it's made much of a difference or not, but it runs great now. And so I think part of the reason why that piston went on me was so this carb needed a bit of tuning when I first got it. I tuned the low side. I never looked at the high side, and I expect it was tuned a little too lean on the high side. That combined with the milling, full throttle runs for a long time, I think I probably just eventually cooked it. So I've tuned the high carb side, the high jet side on the carb now properly. I put an RPM meter on it and made sure it's running at 11.5. So hopefully it stays running for me now for a longer time. I had this about a year, so it lasted me about a year before I burned the piston out. So hopefully it lasts me longer than that. But other than that, it's been a great saw. I love the size of it. The 28-inch bar is great for when I do firewood. I don't have to bend down too much, but it also cuts big wood, and it has just so much power. So that brings me to my last and newest saw, which is the 660, which is why I bought the 660, because I didn't want to run the 444 in the mill anymore in case I burned it out again. So I thought I would get a proper milling saw. 660s, I understand, are rated for continuous full throttle, so basically they're designed for milling. So it's a much bigger saw. It's heavier. It's got so much power. I put the 28-inch bar on this one as well because I have some extra chains, so I wanted to keep them interchangeable with my 44. However, I do think I have something coming up the next month or two where I'm going to have to get a 36-inch bar for it. So that'll be another fun thing, and if I do it, I'll definitely be filming it and put it up for you guys to see. So those are my saw lineups, and yeah. So that's my saw lineup. I thought I'd put them on the ground for you just so you could get a good sense of the size difference. Let's go cut some wood.